talk about the new topic, that is morphology of flowering plants. So we were discussing about the anatomy of flowering plants in the previous classes, right? So anatomy is nothing but it is studying about the internal structure of the flowering plants, and morphology is the external structure. How are we going to study about the flowering plants? External structure of the flowering plants is the morphology of flowering plants. When we say flowering plants, as you all know though, that all the flowering plants will comes under the angiosperms. Okay. So if you take the angiosperms plants, these angiosperm plants are characterized by the presence of root, stem, leaf, flowers and fruits. It means the angiosperm plant will be categorized into all these roots, stems, leaves, flowers and fruits. On that, let us see about each and individually about everything. First one we are going to study about is roots. So as you know that roots are developed from the radicle of the embryo. If you take an embryo, in that embryo from the radicle, the roots are developed. And if you take the types of roots, there are three main important types of roots. One is taproot, second one is fibrous root, and the third one is adventitious root. First we'll see what is mean by taproot. So the example for taproot is mustard plant. So how does exactly the taproot appear? So it is a primary root which has its branches. Those branches we called it as taproot system. And if next we move on to fibrous root. Fibrous root example is wheat plant. So what happens is this primary root will be short-lived in the fibrous root and it will be replaced by large number of roots. It means large number of branches will be arises from it. That we call it as fibrous root. Example is wheat. Third one is adventitious root. So example for adventitious root is grass. So here in the taproot and adventitious root, these roots are developed from the radicle of the embryo. Whereas if you take this adventitious root, these roots are developed from the other parts of the plant, not from the radicle of the embryo. So this is about the types of roots. Next we move on to what is the function of roots. So if you take the function of roots, so as I've already told you, when we plant the, when we water the plant will absorb first, the water will be absorbed first by the root hairs which is present in the root. Okay, so what happened is, so here root hairs plays an important role in the absorption of water and minerals. So when we talk about the root hairs, these root hairs are internal structure of the roots. So first function is it absorbs the water and minerals. Second function is roots will be embedded inside the soil. So it gives a strong anchorage support for the plant. So proper anchorage support will be provided by the root. And the third function is it will store the reserve food materials. It means the roots will be materials for the development of the plant. And it reserves the food materials for the development of the plant. The fourth function is synthesis of plant. So next one is storing of reserve food materials. So when it is reserving the food materials, so there will be a fourth function which is associated with that is synthesis of plant growth regulators. So as we have already discussed about plant growth regulators in the chapter plant growth and movement. In that there are two types of regulators. One is growth regulators, another one is growth inhibitors. So growth regulator is, what are the growth regulators? Auxins, gibberellin and cytokinin. So all those growth regulators are synthesized by root. So this is about the function of root. Next is region of root. Region of root is nothing but if you take a root, it will be categorized into region wise. On that, the first region of root is root cap. So what is the function of a cap? It protects, right? So exactly here it protects the apex of the tender plant. So it protects the tender apex of the root. So it's present in the apex of the root. Next one is region of meristematic tissue. This region of meristematic tissue will be present above the root cap. And the third one is region of root elongation. So root elongation, it means the root will be elongated in lengthwise. For that, they require a growth. So in this region of root elongation, the growth will be takes place for the elongation of root. And the fourth region is region of maturation. When the plant grow, it does not grow lengthwise. It has to be go for the maturation stage. For that maturation stage, when it reaches the maturation stage, it starts producing the root hairs. Those root hairs are developed from the epidermal cells of the plant. So root hairs are developed from the epidermal cells of the plant. So this development of root hairs signifies the maturation is happening. So what is the function of a root hairs? As I have already told you, absorption of water and minerals. So this is about the four regions which is associated with the part of the root. Next one is modification. Generally, the roots will be in this type, but there are certain plants where the roots will be modified into other form. On that other form, the first one we are going to talk about is prop roots. So example for prop root is banyan tree. You must have seen the banyan tree, right? Banyan tree, usually the roots will be vertically downwards. So the roots will be vertically downwards for supporting the thick branches of the tree, banyan tree. Second one is stilt root. Generally, if you see the function of a stilt, it is for the support. So example is maize. So again, just like a prop root, the stilt root will also be grow downward. Okay, but only one change is that this stilt root will be coming off the stem to support the weak stem. So when the stem is very weak, it will support the weak stem. So whereas in the prop root, it will be vertically downward, that's all. Whereas in the stilt root, it will be vertically downward, but apart from that, it will support the weak stem. So that's about the stilt root. Example is made. And the third modification is the modification for respiration. So the plant has to modify for the respiration. The categories of plant which comes under this modification of respiration is nematophores. So what happened is, in this kind of a modification, this kind of a plants will be grown in the swampy areas. Okay, in that swampy areas, the roots will be comes out from the underground. Okay, and it will grow vertically upwards. Whereas prop roots and stilt roots, it will be vertically downwards. Whereas in the modification for respiration, it will be vertically upwards. Why does it has to grow vertically upward? Is because it has to help to absorb the oxygen which is present in the environment for the respiration. So this modification is for the respiration. For respiration, it requires a oxygen. So that is why this roots vertically upwards it grows. So this is about the root. Next, we move on to stem. Stem develop from the plumules of embryo. So stems not only develop from the plumules of embryo, it will bear branches, leaves, flowers and fruits. And just like a root modification, stem will also be get modified. Here it will be modified into three forms. One is underground stem, another one is subaerial stem modification, third one is aerial stem modification. Let us first discuss about the underground stem modification. So, underground stem modification, it is understood that the stem will be under the ground. So, it will be under the soil, and when it is underground stem, what happened is it will store the food materials. So, once it starts storing the food materials, the underground stem will become thick and fleshy. Example is rhizome and banana. Okay, so which both rhizome and banana comes under the underground stem modification. Apart from this, there are other different types of underground stem. In that, the first one is tuber form. Okay, tuber form is example potato, and when we say tuber form, it is that food accumulated in tip of underground branches. So food will be accumulated in tip of underground branches, and this tuber form will be swelled up and become oval in shape. So tuber form will be swelled up and become oval in shape. The second one is bulb. Bulb example is onion and garlic. Okay, in this bulb type of underground step, what happened is internodal part becomes highly reduced. So internodes will be highly reduced. So because of that, the leaves will become condensed and it will become fleshy. Example is onion and garlic. And the third one in the underground stem is corm. Example is Amorphophallus. Common term is elephant foot. Common term is elephant foot. Elephant foot is the vegetable which is available, and the botanical name is Amorphophallus. Okay, so in corm, what happened is it is short, thick, and highly condensed form of rhizome. That's it comes under the underground stem. Next, we move on to subaerial stem. Subaerial, it means half aerial, half underground. So, the stem remains underground and the remaining part becomes aerial. So, there are different on that subaerial. First one is runners. Runners are, example is creeping plants. So, this creeping plant function is to climb the plant. Okay. Next is sucker. Example is chrysanthemum flowers. So, you would have seen that orange color and yellow color flowers, that is chrysanthemum, that comes under the sucker. And the third one is stolon. Stolon example is jasmine. Jasmine plant, again you can see that it will be spread out like a tent. Okay, and the last one is offset. This is water hyacinth, is the water which will be seen in the lakes and ponds. The surface, corners of the lakes and ponds, you can see this offset plants. Okay, next we move on to aerial stem. Aerial stem is nothing but the stem gets so much modified that it is difficult to identify as a stem. So in this aerial stem, the stem will be get so much modified, it is difficult to find out whether it is a stem or not. So in that, the first one is stem tendrils. So tendrils, again the functioning is for the climbing. Stem thorns, it means the thorns will be present in the form of stem. Example is bougainvillea. Third one is phylloclades. Example is opuntia. And the fourth one is cladote. What happened in cladote will be leaves will be reduced to scales or spines. Example is asparagus. Asparagus is the common name is mushroom. And the last one is bulbil. In bulbil, what happened is new plant will be arise after being detached from the parent plant. Example is Dioscorea. So this is about the stem. Next we move on to leaf.